Hi, everybody. I just wanted to record a short video to talk a little bit about comments overall on the ancient style and commercial project, which I just finished grading. And you should have my comments and grade for your individual project on Canvas. So just to hit a couple highlights on overall things that apply to a lot of people's essays. But first, to get started, just in terms of being able to see the comments, you should be able to see my comments on your Google document itself. I make comments in the margin. Sometimes I respond to other comments, and then I also do an end comment on Canvas. So there's a part in the Canvas discussion where you handed it in the grade book, where I have an overall end comment about what I thought of your project and things to think about if you decide to revise. I assign points to everything, and the points are basically a straight based on a percentage. If the an A is 200 to 180 points, a B is 179 to 60, a C is 159 to 40. Less than that's a D or an F. Keep in mind that for several of you, many of you, unfortunately, either you didn't participate in peer review or you were late handed it in or something like that. And for those of you, I deducted a grade for the project, which is part of the problem. Some overall comments. I didn't think that this was necessarily the strongest work that a lot of you probably could have done. And these are some things to think about as we move on to the next sets of assignments, because there's going to be two more major assignments. We're in the process of working on one now with the Strunk and White book and the Harris book. The first thing is that you have to do the reading. And I honestly don't know how to put this any more politely. Um, but it was pretty clear to me from reading these projects that a lot of you didn't really read the selection I gave you from Crowley and Haughey about ancient style, because you didn't quote from it, you didn't really seem to know what they were talking about, and things like that. So the first piece of advice I have for everyone as they move on to the next projects, and also if you decide to revise this one, is you have to do the reading. If you don't do the reading, you're not going to succeed at it. Second piece of advice, do the peer review and do the work ahead of time. I think that there was a number of people who perhaps waited a little too last minute to do some of these things, both in terms of peer review and in terms of handing it in. Not only does it hurt you grade wise if you hand it in too late, and that's something that happened for a lot of people in terms of grade induction thing, but the peer review process is designed to help you improve your draft before you have to turn it in for a grade. Trust that process. Trust the response that you get from your peers. Trust the idea that maybe you shouldn't write the project at the last minute before it's due, all that kind of thing. You do trust the process of trying to put this together ahead of time. Okay. Next thing, I think that a lot of people kind of missed a little bit of the boat here in terms of what the assignment was really about, and maybe I didn't explain this as clearly as I should have. Maybe some people misread the assignment, but the assignment is not really just to interpret a commercial, right? I could have given an assignment that says, tell me what this commercial means, and people could have written all kinds of different things. But that's not really what this was about, and that would have been too easy. What the assignment was about was write about what Crowley and Haughey, Sharon Crowley and Deborah Haughey, have to say about ancient style based on the selection of reading that I gave you, and use that reading to analyze something. And in this case, it was analyze a commercial. I could have asked you to analyze a print ad. I could have asked you to analyze a speech that somebody gave. I could have analyzed all kinds of different things. But the real point is the Crowley and Haughey thing. And I think that a lot of people kind of got lost in that. I think that they spend too much time doing their own interpretations of the commercial instead of actually using the text, the Crowley and Haughey thing. A lot of folks didn't seem to really be writing an essay per se so much as answering a test question. What I mean by that is that a lot of folks had problems with introductions. Introductions are always hard. I always recommend that you write the introduction last. At least what I mean is that you revise everything, and the last thing you should revise before you turn it in is the introduction, because that can sometimes be the hardest place to get started. But a lot of people sort of had sentences like that just right from the beginning is like, I picked this commercial because, or from the class reading we learned, or whatever, something like that. Well, that's the sort of language that you might use if instead of having to write an essay that responds to the question, how does Crowley and Hahi's notion of style fit in analyzing an advertisement, an essay like that, it's the sort of thing that you might say if you were just answering a test question. Well, this isn't a test, this is an essay. And I guess the easiest way that I always think about this is that imagine somebody who is reading this, who knows nothing about our class and knows nothing about the readings. What kind of information would they need to have in order for this to make sense? They'd probably need to know why you're doing this. They'd probably need to know basically who these Crowley and Hahi people are, and which has to do with introducing sources and first reference and things like that. And they'd certainly need to know what you mean by these different figures and tropes. Now that was something that was built into the assignment, and I actually copied and pasted that part of the assignment into many of you in the comments that I gave you, because again, I don't have these different figures and tropes committed to memory either. So what you were supposed to do was explain those in your essay using the advertisement as your evidence to sort of an example of what they mean by metaphor or hyperbole or irony or something like that. Okay. Um, okay, so that's the sort of basic overview of the assignment. Several of you may want to revise this, and you can revise each of the three major projects for the term. There are some basic rules for this, and these are kind of outlined in the syllabus as well. Like I said, the only ones that you can revise are the major assignments. So that'd be this one, the next assignment that we're working on, where you're going to be doing an analysis of the style guides we're reading, and the last one that we'll be doing this semester, which has to do with genre. Okay, you'll see what I mean when we get to that one. Those are the only three things you can revise. You can't revise any of the homework, as in like the discussion forums or the blog posts or anything like that. You can revise, the grades can go up to whatever, if you started with a C, it can go all the way up to an A, except for whatever grade was docked. So in other words, if you lost a letter grade because you turned something in late or because you didn't participate in peer review, you can't get that part back, which is to say that the highest grade that could become would be a B+. The third thing is, and this is really key, is that we need to meet either face-to-face or via Google Hangouts, or we need to have a phone conference, okay? You cannot just do a revision and then just turn it in and not tell me about it. Say we have to have some sort of conversation. When we have this conversation, you need to have some kind of plan. In other words, it's not just a question of coming to me and say, well, I'll just change whatever you want me to change so I can get a better grade. No. You tell me. You've worked on your essay. You've seen my comments. You've seen the comments from your peers. What sorts of things would you do differently? What kinds of questions do you have? What kind of changes are you going to make? All that kind of stuff like that. You need to have a plan. Next point, I'm not sure which point I'm on, is you can revise any of the major projects, but only once each. In other words, you can't make a change to this essay, show it to me, and then say, well, is it a better grade now? And then if you don't like my answer, revise it again. Okay, you only get one chance. And the next point about this is that these revisions are due at the end of the semester. So you might want to, like, for example, put this one kind of aside for the time being, because you might want to think about it a little bit more, especially as we get into some of these other projects. And you also want to think about this in terms of revising strategically, which is really my last point. If you're not happy with the grade that you got on this and you just want to revise it just for the sake of revising it, that's not really that useful of a way to spend your time potentially. You want to revise any of these major projects because it's going to make a difference in terms of your grade. And what I mean by that is that if you ended up with, like, say, a B on this assignment, and you end up with a B on the next assignment, and you end up with a B in the third assignment, and your participation grade and blog grades and stuff like that all end up being in the B territory, guess what? You're going to get a B. And so revising this essay just because you think you could do better, that might make you, feel better as a writer, but as far as like how to spend your time as a student, I don't know if it's necessarily the best strategy. So hopefully we can talk through some of these different things. If you have questions about any of this, by all means, ask below. Um, and we'll keep moving on. Two last things before I leave you to get back to work. And again, if you have any questions, whatever, ask below. You'll soon be getting grade information from me for the first half of the participation grade for the semester, and also for the first half of the blog post for the semester. So that means by the end of this week, probably by Thursday-ish is my guess, maybe Friday-ish, you'll have a fair amount of grade information to work on in terms of how you're standing in the class right now. And then the last thing is that take this to heart in terms of thinking about the next assignments. If you don't feel like if you feel like you didn't read the Crowley and Haughey closely enough, and you know that, then think about that in terms of, are you reading these other assignments, the Strunk and White book and the Harris book? Are you reading those two books closely enough? If you felt like you did read Crowley and Haughey closely enough, but I still sort of suggested that maybe you didn't, well, then maybe you may need to sort of reevaluate what you mean by doing a close and careful reading of these texts, because maybe you actually need to do a little bit more with it than you might have thought. I think that's it for now. Like I said, keep charging down with the assignments we're working on, and if you've got questions about this or anything else, just let me know. I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to answer them below. I'm happy to talk to people individually. Okay, see you later.